Cambridge IELTS Reading 11 Test 2 Passage 3. Neuroaesthetics. Paragraph 1. Line. An emerging called neuroaesthetics is seeking to bring scientific objectivity to the study of art, and has already given us a better understanding of many masterpieces. Emerging equals newly developing. Discipline equals field of study. Neuroaesthetics equals the scientific study of how our brain responds to art. Objectivity equals seeing things without personal feelings, being neutral. Masterpieces equals great works of art. Explanation. A new area of study called neuroaesthetics is trying to study art using scientific methods. It has already helped people understand famous artworks more clearly. Line. The blurred imagery of Impressionist paintings seems to stimulate the brain's amygdala. For instance, blurred imagery equals unclear or soft-looking pictures. Impressionist paintings equals art style with soft lines and light colors, e.g. Monet. Stimulate equals to activate or excite. Amygdala equals a part of the brain that controls emotions. Explanation. For example, the unclear pictures in Impressionist paintings seem to activate the emotional part of our brain called the amygdala. Line. Since the amygdala plays a crucial role in our feelings, that finding might explain why many people find these pieces so moving. Equals very important. Moving equals emotional, causing strong feelings. Explanation. Because the amygdala is important for emotions, this may explain why many people feel emotional when they look at these paintings. Paragraph 2. Line. Could the same approach also shed light on abstract 20th century pieces? From Mondrian's geometrical blocks of color to Pollock's seemingly haphazard arrangements of splashed paint on canvas. Shed light on equals help explain or understand. Abstract equals not realistic, based on shapes or feelings. Geometrical equals like squares, triangles. Haphazard equals not planned, random. Arrangements equals how things are placed. Canvas equals the cloth used for painting. Explanation. Can this same science also help us understand modern abstract art, like Mondrian's shape paintings or Pollock's messy paint splashes? Line. Skeptics believe that people claim to like such works simply because they are famous. Skeptics equals people who doubt or question things. Claim equals say something, often without proof. Explanation. Some people who doubt the value of modern art think others say they like it just because it's popular. Line. We certainly do have an inclination to follow the crowd. Inclination equals tendency, something we naturally do. Follow the crowd equals do what other people do. Explanation. It's true that people often like to do what others are doing. Line. When asked to make simple perceptual decisions such as matching a shape to its rotated image. For example, people often choose a definitively wrong answer if they see others doing the same. Perceptual equals related to seeing or sensing. Rotated equals turned around. Definitively equals clearly, without doubt. Explanation. In tests where people match shapes, they sometimes choose the wrong answer if others around them do, even when it's clearly incorrect. Line. It is easy to imagine that this mentality would have even more impact on a fuzzy concept like art appreciation, where there is no right or wrong answer. Mentality equals way of thinking. Fuzzy concept equals unclear idea. Art appreciation equals understanding or enjoying art. Explanation. So, it makes sense that this group thinking would affect how we judge art, since there's no definite correct answer in art. Paragraph 3. Line. Angelina Hawley Dolan, of Boston College, Massachusetts, responded to this debate by asking volunteers to view pairs of paintings, either the creations of famous abstract artists or the doodles of infants. Chimps and elephants. Responded equals replied or reacted. Debate equals discussion about different opinions. Volunteers equals people who offer to help or take part without being paid. Pairs equals sets of two. Creations equals things that someone made. Doodles equals simple, messy drawings. Infants equals babies. Chimps equals chimpanzees, a kind of smart monkey. Abstract artists equals painters who create non-realistic art. Explanation. Angelina Hawley Dolan, a researcher, joined this discussion by doing an experiment. She showed people two types of paintings, famous abstract art and messy drawings made by babies or animals like chimps and elephants. Line, they then had to judge which they preferred. Judge equals decide or give an opinion. Preferred equals liked more. Explanation, the volunteers were asked to say which painting they liked better. Line, a third of the paintings were given no captions. While many were labeled incorrectly, volunteers might think they were viewing a chimp's messy brushstrokes when they were actually seeing an acclaimed masterpiece. A third equals 1 out of 3. Captions equals small texts or labels explaining something. Labeled incorrectly equals given the wrong name or identity. Brushstrokes equals marks made by a paintbrush. Acclaimed equals praised or admired. Masterpiece equals great work of art. Explanation, some paintings were not labeled, and many were labeled wrongly. For example, people might think a great painting was made by a chimp when it was actually a famous artwork. Line, in each set of trials, volunteers generally preferred the work of renowned artists, even when they believed it was by an animal or a child. Trials equals tests or experiments. Generally equals usually. Renowned equals famous and respected. Explanation, in every part of the experiment, people usually liked the famous artist's work, even when they thought it was painted by an animal or a child. Line, it seems that the viewer can sense the artist's vision in paintings, even if they can't explain why. Viewer equals person looking at the painting. Sense equals feel or notice. Artist's vision equals the idea or feeling the artist wanted to share. Explanation, this suggests that people can feel the message or meaning behind the art, even if they don't know how to explain it. Paragraph 4. Line, Robert Pepperell, an artist based at Cardiff University, creates ambiguous works that are neither entirely abstract nor clearly representational. Based at equals working in. Ambiguous equals not clear, can be understood in many ways. Entirely equals completely. Representational equals showing real things or people clearly in art. Explanation, artist Robert Pepperell, who works at Cardiff University, makes paintings that are not fully abstract but also don't clearly show real-life objects either. They are a mix. Line, in one study, Pepperell and his collaborators asked volunteers to decide how powerful they considered an artwork to be, and whether they saw anything familiar in the piece. Collaborators equals people working together. Considered equals thought. Familiar equals known or recognized. Explanation, in an experiment, Pepperell and his team asked people how strong or emotional they felt a painting was, and if they saw anything they recognized in it. Line, the longer they took to answer these questions, the more highly they rated the piece under scrutiny, and the greater their neural activity. Rated equals judged, gave a score to. Under scrutiny equals being carefully studied. Neural activity equals brain activity. Explanation, when people took more time to think about a painting, they gave it a higher score and their brains were more active. Line, it would seem that the brain sees these images as puzzles, and the harder it is to decipher the meaning, the more rewarding is the moment of recognition. Puzzles equals something difficult to understand or solve. Decipher equals figure out, understand. Rewarding equals giving pleasure or satisfaction. Recognition equals suddenly understanding something or seeing what it is. Explanation, the brain treats these artworks like puzzles. The harder they are to understand, the more satisfying it is when we finally see or feel their meaning. Paragraph 5. Line, and what about artists such as Mondrian, whose paintings consist exclusively of horizontal and vertical lines encasing blocks of color? Consist exclusively of equals made only of. Horizontal equals flat. Left to right lines. Vertical equals straight. Up and down lines. Encasing equals surrounding or enclosing. Blocks of color equals large areas filled with one color. Explanation, now think about artists like Mondrian, whose paintings are only made of straight lines that surround boxes of color. Line, Mondrian's works are deceptively simple, but eye-tracking studies confirm that they are meticulously composed, and that simply rotating a piece radically changes the way we view it. Deceptively simple equals looks simple, but is actually complex. Eye-tracking studies equals experiments that follow where your eyes look. Confirm equals prove. Meticulously equals very carefully and exactly. Composed equals arranged or designed. Rotating equals turning. Radically equals greatly, in a big way. Explanation. Although Mondrian's art looks simple, eye studies show that they are very carefully designed, and just turning the picture can completely change how we see it. Line. With the originals, volunteers' eyes tended to stay longer on certain places in the image. But with the altered versions they would flit across a piece more rapidly. Originals equals the real, unchanged paintings. Tended to equals usually. Flit across equals move quickly and lightly. More rapidly equals faster. Explanation. When people looked at the original artworks, their eyes focused on certain spots for longer. But when the artwork was changed, their eyes moved quickly all over it. Line. As a result, the volunteers considered the altered versions less pleasurable when they later rated the work. As a result equals because of this. Altered equals changed. Pleasurable equals enjoyable. Rated equals judged or gave a score to. Explanation. So, people liked the changed versions less and gave them lower scores. Paragraph 6. Line. In a similar study, Oshin Vartanian of Toronto University asked volunteers to compare original paintings with ones which he had altered by moving objects around within the frame. Similar study equals another experiment like the previous one. Compare equals find differences and similarities. Frame equals the area of the picture. Explanation. In another study, Oshin Vartanian asked people to look at real paintings and changed versions where he moved parts of the picture around. Line. He found that almost everyone preferred the original. Whether it was a Van Gogh still life or an abstract by Miro. Preferred equals liked more. Still life equals a painting of objects like fruit, flowers, or bowls. Abstract equals not realistic. Explanation. He discovered that nearly all people liked the original paintings better. Whether they were realistic, like Van Gogh's, or abstract, like Miro's. Line. Vartanian also found that changing the composition of the paintings reduced activation in those brain areas linked with meaning and interpretation. Composition equals the arrangement or layout of a picture. Reduced equals made less. Activation equals activity or response. Linked with equals connected to. Interpretation equals understanding or explaining something. Explanation. Vartanian also saw that when a painting's layout was changed, the brain showed less activity in the parts used to find meaning in what we see. Paragraph 7 line. In another experiment, Alex Forsyth of the University of Liverpool analysed the visual intricacy of different pieces of art. And her results suggest that many artists use a key level of detail to please the brain. Experiment equals a test or scientific study. Analysed equals studied carefully. Visual intricacy equals how complex and detailed something looks. Pieces of art equals artworks. Suggest equals show. Indicate. Key level equals right or best amount. To please equals to make happy or satisfied. Explanation. In a different study, researcher Alex Forsyth studied how detailed artworks are, and found that many artists use just the right amount of detail to make the brain happy. Line. Too little and the work is boring, but too much results in a kind of perceptual overload. According to Forsyth, too little equals not enough. Boring equals not interesting. Perceptual overload equals when your brain gets too much information and feels overwhelmed. Explanation. If the artwork has too little detail, it feels dull, but if it has too much, our brain gets overloaded and can't enjoy it properly. Line. What's more, appealing pieces both abstract and representational show signs of fractals, repeated motifs recurring in different scales. What's more equals in addition. Appealing equals attractive or pleasing. Representational equals realistic, showing real-life things. Fractals equals patterns that repeat at different sizes. Motifs equals repeated shapes or patterns. Recurring equals happening again and again. Scales equals sizes. Explanation. Also, beautiful art, whether abstract or realistic, often has patterns that repeat in different sizes. These are called fractals. Line. Fractals are common throughout nature. For example, in the shapes of mountain peaks or the branches of trees. Common throughout equals found everywhere in. Nature equals the natural world, plants, animals, etc. Closing parenthesis. Mountain peaks equals the tops of mountains. Branches equals parts of a tree that grow from the trunk. Explanation. You can see these repeating patterns in nature too, like in the shapes of mountains or tree branches. Line. It is possible that our visual system, which evolved in the great outdoors, finds it easier to process such patterns. Visual system equals the part of the brain and eyes that sees and understands images. Evolved equals developed over time. Great outdoors equals natural environment outside. Process equals handle or understand. Explanation. Since humans developed in natural environments, our brain may be better at understanding these natural repeating patterns. Paragraph 8. Line. It is also intriguing that the brain appears to process movement when we see a handwritten letter, as if we are replaying the writer's moment of creation. Intriguing equals interesting or fascinating. Appears to equals seems to. Handwritten equals written by hand. Replaying equals mentally repeating. Moment of creation equals the time when something was made. Explanation. It's also interesting that when we see handwriting, the brain acts like it is watching the person write it again. Line. This has led some to wonder whether Pollock's works feel so dynamic because the brain reconstructs the energetic actions the artist used as he painted. Led some to wonder equals made some people think. Dynamic equals full of energy or movement. Reconstructs equals builds again in the mind. Energetic actions equals strong, active movements. Explanation. This idea has made people think maybe Pollock's paintings feel so energetic because our brain imagines how he moved while painting. Line. This may be down to our brain's mirror neurons, which are known to mimic others' actions. Maybe down to equals might be caused by. Mirror neurons equals brain cells that copy what others do. Mimic equals copy or imitate. Explanation. This might be because of special brain cells called mirror neurons that copy the actions we see others doing. Line. The hypothesis will need to be thoroughly tested. However, hypothesis equals an idea or theory that needs testing. Thoroughly equals completely and carefully. Tested equals checked or studied. Explanation. But this idea still needs to be tested very carefully. Line. It might even be the case that we could use neuroaesthetic studies to understand the longevity of some pieces of artwork. It might be the case equals it could be true. Neuroaesthetic studies equals scientific studies of how the brain responds to art. Longevity equals how long something lasts. Explanation. Maybe we could use brain studies to learn why some artworks stay popular for a long time. Line. While the fashions of the time might shape what is currently popular, works that are best adapted to our visual system may be the most likely to linger once the trends of previous generations have been forgotten. Fashions of the time equals what's popular at the moment. Shape equals influence or affect. Currently equals now. Adapted equals matched or suited. Linger equals remain, stay for a long time. Trends equals popular styles or habits. Previous generations equals people who lived before us. Explanation. Although trends change what people like now, the artworks that match our brain's natural way of seeing may stay popular even after current fashions are forgotten. Final paragraph. Line. It's still early days for the field of neuroaesthetics, and these studies are probably only a taste of what is to come. Early days equals just beginning, not developed yet. Field equals area of study. A taste of equals a small example of. What is to come equals what will happen in the future. Explanation. Neuroaesthetics is a new subject, and the studies done so far are just the beginning. More discoveries are expected in the future. Line. It would, however, be foolish to reduce art appreciation to a set of scientific laws. Foolish equals unwise or silly. Reduce equals limit or make something smaller. Art appreciation equals understanding and enjoying art. A set of scientific laws equals fixed rules like in science. Explanation. But it would be unwise to try to explain all of art using only science or fixed rules. Line. We shouldn't underestimate the importance of the style of a particular artist, their place in history and the artistic environment of their time. Underestimate equals think something is less important than it really is. Style equals the special way someone does something. Particular equals specific. Place in history equals how they fit into the time period they lived in. Artistic environment equals the world of art and other artists around him at that time. Explanation: we must remember that an artist's unique style, their time in history, and the art world around him are all important in understanding their work. Line: abstract art offers both a challenge and the freedom to play with different interpretations. Offers equals gives. Challenge equals something difficult that makes you think. Freedom equals the ability to choose. Interpretations equals different ways of understanding something. Explanation: abstract art gives people both a mental challenge and the freedom to see and understand it in different ways. Line: in some ways. It's not so different to science, where we are constantly looking for systems and decoding meaning so that we can view and appreciate the world in a new way. In some ways equals in some aspects. Constantly equals all the time. Systems equals organized patterns or rules. Decoding equals figuring out or translating. Appreciate equals understand and enjoy. Explanation: in fact, art is a bit like science because in both, people are always trying to find patterns and understand meanings to see the world in a new way.